Now I'm going to show you how to do some easy touch-ups with an old photograph that may have some stains or some spots on it, and then how to add some color over top of the photograph to make it look like it is kind of a traditional hand-painted photograph. So this image has been scanned into the computer, and you can see it's a little bit crooked. So I'm first going to use my crop tool, and I'm just going to crop this in to kind of get out the edge of the photograph. So I'm going to bring the edges in here. And then I'm going to rotate a little by going to the corner and kind of straightening the photo a bit. I'm just going to bring it in so I don't have any of the edge on there. And so this photo is in pretty good shape. There are a lot of little spots and stains that we can easily get rid of here. So to get rid of some of these spots and stains, I'm going to be using some of my healing tools here. So the spot healing tool brush is a great one to use for this because I can just go in, adjust my brush size, and just kind of go in and spot heal some of these larger areas. So it'll just blend the background and kind of clean things up. Now remember, you can make your brush for this, or any brush tool, you can adjust the size of the brush using your brackets on the keyboard. So for this works pretty great. I'm just kind of clicking through this. Now I'd have to be very careful though on areas where there are hard lines. So if I zoom in here, I need to make my brush really tiny for something like this. It's on her ear. But I think for this photo in general, I can really use my spot healing tool pretty effectively. Another tool that might work well is the patch tool, which is underneath and nested within this group of tools here. So the patch tool allows you to circle an area and then pull it to an area where you want to kind of copy the background and blend it in to the area that you just circled. So that looks like a clean area, so I pulled it there. So if I circle this damaged area, I can pull it to an undamaged area and it'll blend it away. So this moves a little bit faster. You can kind of use a little bit larger areas. I could even circle something over here. And if I wanted to, I could drag it across here and fill it with the background over here. And it blends it pretty nicely. So I can kind of grab big areas and do this. And I'm zoomed in, so I'm seeing more speckles than you'd probably see if you zoomed out looking at the picture. For this one, I have to be kind of careful of this edge. So I want to try to keep that edge. So I'm going to pull up so I don't ruin the edge of that dress. So I'm just going to continue to do this until this is all cleaned up. So I am literally just kind of scribbling through here and cleaning this all up. Just kind of scrolling through to see if I've missed any areas. And for this, purposes of demonstration, I'm not going to be really a perfectionist. So I can kind of make my brush a little larger here and blend these away. They're just kind of little age spots on the photo. Just to keep in mind, make sure that if you're using the spot or the patch tool like this, that if you go to use another tool, like say if I go to use my spot healing brush, I want to make sure that I have first deselected the area that I just selected with the patch tool. So Control D will deselect that, and then it'll allow my other tools to work. If I still have something selected, only the area that is selected will be targeted. So your other tools may not seem like they're working if you have an area of your photo selected. Okay, so she looks pretty good here. She's pretty cleaned up in this area. Okay, so, and you could use any of these different tools here. Sometimes I have to use my clone stamp, but I'll show you that in the next tutorial. So for this one, it looks pretty good. All I'm going to do is actually add some color over top of this. So anytime I want to apply color or paint to a photograph, I want to add a new layer. So then I'm keeping my paint layer separate from my photograph layer. And by doing that, I can then go ahead and blend the two layers together in different ways using my blending modes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layers panel and I'm going to add a new blank layer. So this is not a duplicate layer, it's a blank layer where I'm going to add my paint. I can also go up to layers at the top here and go to new layer. So I've added a new blank layer. So now I have to remember that there's 2 layers that are making up my photograph. So if I want to go back and do any adjustments or clean up or use any of the healing brush tools again, I have to make sure I go back to the background layer. I'm on the blank layer right now, and that's where I'm going to apply my paint. So this can be kind of fun. It kind of mimics the look of old photographs when they added oil paint to add in some color to old photographs. So I'm going to use my paintbrush tool, and I'm going to go and open my swatches. So I can go to Window, down to Swatches, and as you can see over here, I have a lot of swatches that opened up. So I can pretty much go in and add some color. Let's add a skin tone here. So you can see I'm painting on the photograph. I have kind of a soft fuzzy brush. Now the issue is it's painting right over top of the photograph, and I want it to blend with the photograph. I don't want it to cover up the photograph completely. So to fix this, I can go into my blending modes in the layers panel here. So what I'll do is in my layers panel here, if I go to this drop down menu, it has lots of different ways that it'll blend the layers together. The one that I like to use is color, and it's at the bottom of this list here. And you can see now the things that I'm painting are on their own layer, and they blend with the photograph and aren't covering up the photograph. So I'm going to go in as best I can and add in paint, and I am going to clean up anything with the eraser tool. So because it's on its own layer, I can erase the paint, I can add more paint, and it's not going to affect my photograph underneath. So if I turn this layer off in the layers panel here by clicking the eye icon, you can see before and after. So this is a little bit harsh, it's a little strong, but I'm just using my paintbrush to kind of fill in some of the skin tones. Okay, and then anywhere that I overpaint, I can go in with my eraser tool, like on the eyes here, and I can fix that. So it's going to be very strong at first, but I'm going to go in and I'll adjust that when I'm done. If I need to, I can go and add more layers. Say if I wanted to do the skin on one layer, I could add another layer above this and say do the hair or the eyes. So you could work all on one layer, or you could use multiple layers. Sometimes I like to use multiple layers because then I can play with the opacity of the layers to play with how strong the color appears. So I'm going to change this to color again. I'm going to go in with the blue and add some blue. So that looks a little bit fake, but that's okay. We're having fun with this. So I'm going to erase some of this. And actually, I'm going to erase where her pupil is. So I'm just using my eraser tool to do this. And where the whites of her eye are. It's on its own layer, so I can totally have full control over this layer. So because it's on its own layer now, I can play with the opacity of the entire layer and bring it down just to add a little bit. So with her skin too, I'm going to bring the opacity of the whole layer down so that it just has a tiny touch of color. And then I'm going to add another layer, change it to color mode, and add some of her hair color. Now, on this color mode, browns work very subtly. Blacks and grays don't show up at all because of the way it blends with the background. So obviously this is a little bright. She looks a little bit like a clown, but we will just kind of go in. I'm going to add some more back here, and I can always erase it with my eraser tool when I'm done. Maybe on the edges here, I could change the opacity of my brush up here to make it really, really transparent and just kind of get some of the fuzzy edges of her hair. So it's not like such a harsh line, especially down here where it fades into her shirt, kind of. So I'm just changing the opacity of my brush, and sometimes I change the opacity of the entire layer. This is very, very bright. I probably wouldn't generally choose this color if I was trying to make it look realistic. But I have a very transparent brush now, and we're kind of adding some subtle details. Like I could even go in and add a little. And now because the hair is on its own layer, I can go and erase areas if I make a mistake. I can blend them. So clean that up. My eraser's only at 30%, so I'm going to bring that up. So I'm always conscious of the opacity of my brushes because that does make a big difference. I'm going to go in here but I'm going to tone this hair way down anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to take all the hair and just bring it way, way down. So she just has a little bit of color in her hair. Oops. So my opacity, even at like 10% is, you know, or 12%, it adds a little bit of color. Okay, and then, you know, you could do the same thing with, I'm going to add a new layer and add some like rosy cheeks or something like that. So I can go into color, and I could choose like a rosy color, make sure I'm on the paintbrush. I'll use a very soft brush here. So remember, you can change the hardness or softness of your brush. I always use the brackets on my keyboard to change the size of my brush, but you can always change that up at the top as well. So I'm going to just go in, and this is kind of, they would do this with a with oil paint before there were colored photographs, and kind of go in and just paint right over top of the photographs. So I'm just kind of doing it now digitally, which is still kind of fun. So you're pretty much applying makeup to the photo. And then, like I said before, you can bring that completely down. I don't know, her forehead's a little bright, so I might take this opacity of the eraser, bring it down, and just kind of subtly erase some of this off her forehead. So I'm playing with the opacity of the brush and of the layer here. And actually, I think I do want to add a little bit to her lips. Maybe I'll choose a little bit different tone. And I actually just erased her cheek. So I'm going to go back. Okay. So now when I look back, it kind of subtly looks like a old painted photograph. So I can continue on, add new layers. I just have to make sure that I change the mode to color in the blending modes here. And then let's just do her dress. One last thing. Maybe she'll have like a blue dress. I could add some of that in. Remember, I can make my brush. It's only at a 29% opacity, so I can kind of fade it as it gets to the edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and just fade this entire layer so it's very, very subtle and soft. So then here is my digitally painted old photograph. And then here's an example of an original old photograph and what that looked like painted. So you can see it's just a black and white photo where they've added some paint details just to kind of add color to the photo. So this was all hand painted on. And then this was my Photoshop one that I did.